Have a chance to take a look at the minutes.
Move to approve as written.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We have a public hearing on conditional use permit application for Target at 2401 Cooley Road, Kimley Horn. This is a public hearing. It's your opportunity to weigh in on this issue. If anybody here has anything they'd like to add, talk about, please keep it concise. Try not to repeat anything that other people may have to say. Please identify yourself and your address. Did I miss anything? All right, once again, it's a public hearing. Is there anyone here who has any comment on this issue? Anyone with a comment? Anyone with a comment? Anyone with a comment?
Ask for, is this on the computer? Is this on
Zoom?
Zoom?
Yep.
Yep.
Ask that too, please.
Who's?
We have Grady Erickson online at the moment.
Okay.
Grady, if you wish to speak on this item, feel free to raise your hand. Nope.
Nothing? Okay.
I move to close the public hearing then.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Public hearing is closed. Discussion and possible action on a conditional use permit and final development plan review for Target at 2401 Cooley Road, Kimley Horn.
Good evening, Plan Commission. Tonight, Kimley Horn submitted a conditional use permit to install light poles that exceed the building's height. The building is 27 feet 4 inches tall, while the light poles are proposed to be 36 feet in height, matching the existing poles on the premises. Additionally, a development plan set was submitted for parking lot redesign that includes restriping, stall parking, signage, and wayfinding drive-up beacon installations, lighting, crosswalk installation, and driveway grading improvements. The 24 new drive-up parking dedicated spaces will replace 34 regular parking spaces, equating to a loss of 10 parking stalls. An additional loss of 38 spaces is required to make driveway access improvements into the parking lot to better safely direct traffic to and from the site. As the site is overparked, Target is not required to accommodate these lost parking stalls. Therefore, staff recommends approval of all the items with the listed stipulations.
Do all those storage containers in their lot weigh against their parking capacity as far as?
We haven't heard anything regarding issues.
I mean, I'm there every day, and I know
I
have
asked
a
the
spot to
same,
park
I asked the
every
same
day.
question. It's due to remodeling that those are there, I guess, so they gotta be temporary.
Correct.
I think Mike brought that up to me because I asked that.
Yep.
Are these lights going to be dimmable? Or they're not on all night or anything like that, are they? Or do they shut them off at 11 o'clock or whenever they close, or how does that work?
They will operate exactly as how the existing light poles on site do. So they're adding about 2 or 3 new light poles in addition to the 10 or 15.
But do they shut off? I guess I'm just asking that question. Do you know?
I do not know.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't think
It hasn't
so. I
been
think
an
for a
issue.
safety standpoint,
Well, it hasn't been an issue, I know that, but I was,
right? I think most oftentimes they leave them on just for safety purposes.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Since I'm wearing a red shirt, I'll move to approve.
Does that mean I have to second it?
The red shirts with conditions?
Yes, I'll second it
All
then.
conditions.
Sure she
All right,
is.
we have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on a downtown design review for Dick's Bar and Grill at 111 Walnut Street.
Dick's Bar is looking to repaint their building facade to the dark tones of red and tan as shown in the paint swatch examples in your packets. These tones do meet our downtown design overlay guidelines as earthy neutral tones. Therefore, staff is recommending approval.
So moved.
Second?
We got a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on a final development plan review and downtown design review for Canokes at 216 and 218 Locust Street, Derrick Building Solutions.
Pinocchio's has acquired the building at 218 Locust Street and is desirous of remodeling the interior and exterior of the building for their business operations expansion. The design review includes the listed updates and staff report, as well as some new proposed signage on the north and south facades. Staff review has shown all proposed improvements meet the downtown overlay design requirements and sign code dimensional requirements. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the development plans and downtown design review for Conkey's.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on a certified survey map for 1541 and 1551 Namacoggin Street, Ogden Engineering.
So this CSM application is meant to create 2 new lots that will accommodate a future zero lot line twin home. The land currently belongs to the condo building to the immediate south, and later on, the applicants do plan to rezone the twin home lots from RM1 multifamily residential to R2 two-family residential.
Is that one of those deals where they have the firewall between the two, and it will be noted at the courthouse that this has been done? We've done this before, but all those conditions will be on there?
We can add that
I
in
would
there.
please add that to make sure it's clear and it separates it to show that the lot lines at the firewall are right in the middle of the building.
Okay.
That's how we did it in the past. It's just clarity, and I'll move to approve with that if I can.
I'll second it.
Motion second to approve with stipulation. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on a certified survey map for 2238 and 2240 Namacoggin Street, Devco Properties LLC.
Well, similar in nature, this is another CSM application. This time their desires of splitting an existing lot at 2238 Namacoggin Street, which it currently contains a two-family duplex. They're looking to split the existing home down the center, creating a zero lot line twin home concept again, allowing for both sides of the building to be owned by separate entities.
I'll move to approve with the same stipulation as the first one.
I'll second it.
Motion second to approve with stipulation. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on a recommendation to Common Council to partially discontinue a portion of public right-of-way for 11th Street, generally located between 1217 11th Street and 1208 11th Street. Stephen and Terry Wilcox.
So here the applicants have requested the city to vacate approximately an 8,544 square foot portion of 11th Street right-of-way. The Wilcoxes own both properties to the east and west of the proposed right-of-way discontinuance, and this request was submitted as Wilcox's desire to have the ability to properly grade and repair the area. Staff is recommending the Plan Commission forward a recommendation to Council to approve Resolution 1922 to partially discontinue portion of 11th Street.
I have a question. What would ever happen if the ownership of that property changed where it wasn't all in one family?
Yeah,
That was going to be my question, so I'm glad you asked.
is this perpetual?
Yes, the other side, the purchaser of that acquired the one half of the right-of-way would get that half, and then the existing owner would get the other half. Does that make sense? So we're vacating a portion of right-of-way.
Right.
Generally, when you have two separate property owners, one would get half, the other one would get the other half,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So in the event that one side were to sell, they would get their original property plus the half.
So does it become part of the lot
Correct.
line then?
Correct.
Like,
Yep.
it's gonna-
It would
they're
be
gonna
part
have-
of their lot,
They're gonna
yes.
extend the lot line through that right away?
Yes, effectively, yep.
Right, it goes on the tax rolls then.
Right.
Correct.
That was the other
Right.
question.
We did include an easement to make sure that we would always have access back there if we ever needed to get back to the railroad tracks or need access for, whatever. But this certainly does help us not have to, be on the hook for maintenance or anything like that on a property that, we have no intentions of ever
Right.
doing anything with.
That's dead end. I move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on final development plans for Dayton Freight at 3011 Enloe Street, Streams Edge Properties LLC.
Dayton Freight has submitted plans to expand their existing parking lot on the premises. The building itself will not be expanded, just FYI. The parking plan includes the following updates, such as an increase in number of employee parking stalls on site from 67 to 99, a decrease in trailer parking stalls from 113 to 111, and an increase in tractor parking stalls from 34 to 42. Additional site improvements include a proposed portable jersey barrier, remote DEF-filled fuel tanks, trailer snow scraper, generator pad, fueling area, and block heater bollards. With all that in mind, staff does recommend approval of these final parking lot expansion plans for Dayton Freight.
They're just kind of reconfiguring their parking lot and stuff like that. It's not getting bigger, it's not getting smaller, they're just redoing it, basically.
They're expanding it a little bit more to the west a little bit.
Okay.
But that's more so to accommodate the fuel tanks and jersey barriers that they're installing.
But there's
So-
plenty of room there, though, too.
Yeah,
correct?
there's plenty of room.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Got a motion and second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Item G, we're pulling from the agenda. Discussion and possible action on final development plans for Lift Bridge Brewing at Lot 2 of the St. Croix Meadows CSM North.
So Lift Bridge's final development plans include a proposed 34,260 square foot two-story building with proposed future expansion of approximately 19,000 square feet. The property will be used to brew beer, soda, seltzer, and then bottle these products to distribute to local areas in Minnesota and Wisconsin. The main floor will have a tap room with a full-service restaurant and approximately 176 seats. And up above on the second floor will be a banquet hall with a 200-person capacity. Outside of the building, there are proposed 210 parking stalls and a beer garden on the east side closest to the ballpark. The beer garden will have a stage for concerts and music, gaming area with bocce ball courts and other yard games, as well as a separate dog and child play areas. Staff does recommend approval of these final development plans for Lift Bridge with the listed conditions in the staff report.
I'll move we approve with the recommended actions.
Got a motion and second to approve. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on final development plans for Hudson Physicians Lot 2 development at XXX Hillcrest Drive, Hudson Physicians SC.
It doesn't have an address yet.
I understand that.
Hudson Physicians has submitted final development plans to develop a one-story professional medical office facility, approximately 10,000 square feet in area, on tax parcel 236-2079-00200. The purpose of this development is to provide additional outpatient services to the Hudson community. Staff is recommending approval of final development plans with some listed stipulations as noted in the staff report again.
And if we can add the stipulation to keep the potential discussions open with the neighbors to the south, as we did last time, I will move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion and second to approve. Any discussion?
Was there any talk from neighbors up there?
No, but just in case.
Yep.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on concept development plans for 307 to 321 Second Street, 100 Commercial Street, Reuter, Walton.
The city has received concept development plans from Reuter Walton to construct a 109 residential unit mixed-use apartment building on the city block of 307, 321 Second Street, and 100 Commercial Street. The applicants are here tonight to give a presentation of the proposal. They're all set to go.
Welcome.
And just to kind of kick this off, a few months ago, Reuter Walton attended and presented to the Common Council with an initial concept. They've since made some adjustments, which will be reflected here today. So if they kind of reference the previous concept, I don't know that all the plan commissioners, saw the previous concept, but if they reference that, that's what they're talking about, was the previous concept that they introduced to council a few months back.
We all ready? My name's Ari Peretz. I'm with Reuter Walton and 26 Portland Avenue, St. Paul. This is the new concept, which you can see in front of you. Can everybody see this okay on their screens?
As long as all the screens are turned on. Yep.
Oops, I picked the wrong one.
So as Mike mentioned and Tiffany mentioned, we are excited to share some of the updates to the concept that we've been working on over the past few months. We've had really positive and successful community engagement through 2 community meetings that followed our initial council meeting back in the spring. Individual conversations with interested neighbors and other engagement efforts that we feel have yielded a really set of successful improvements to the project. Just to remind everybody, the block that we're talking about is circled in red here. Wisconsin on the south, Commercial on the north, 2nd Street on the east, and 1st Street on the west. In a series of the project goals that I think many folks have seen before that have really served as guideposts as we work to flesh out the contours of this concept, and which continue to guide us today. Economic development in downtown, legacy level quality of design and construction, neighborhood vitality, and ultimately increasing housing options in the neighborhood and providing a unique type of development that doesn't yet exist in the downtown area. So I'll invite Ron Gagnon up just to share a couple words about who he is and his family is and just some of the background of the site, and then we'll dive in.
Thank you. My name's Ronald Gagnon. I've been a lifelong resident of Hudson. Before my parents accumulated this property over probably from the mid-50s. There were several buildings on it. On the one we're talking about, there's an old railroad depot that probably everybody knows. That was abandoned by the railroad many years ago, and it it was a short line from Hudson to Ellsworth and that sort of thing. The railroad abandoned it, and we purchased that from the railroad. There was a building on the corner of First and, what is it, First and Walnut, Commercial? No, First and Commercial, I guess. That was a stone building that was built when you can see it in the lower right of that one picture. That was built by the Williams family, who had a sanitarium here and all sorts of other things. And that was after the town burned down. I remember all that. And that was the first supposedly fireproof building built in Hudson. At one time we looked to modify that building, but the facade was ready to fall into 2nd Street, and it was proved perfectly uneconomical. So we rented it out to some people for a while. But anyway, we were there, local lumber company was there. First National Bank bought the local lumber company site, and eventually we purchased which became Associated Bank. We purchased that site, that bank site, from Associated Bank when they decided to abandon their presence in downtown Hudson and moved up on the hill. So that's how we ended up with the whole block. And so here we are today to get your blessings or comments or what have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. And I'll invite Bob Loken from ESG to come up too. This is a little bit about Reuter Walton. Reuter Walton develops projects like this all over the greater Twin Cities metropolitan area. And we have a series of projects that have served as important influencers for us as we've thought about the design and working this building into the unique fabric of downtown Hudson and both 2nd Street and 1st Street. So here's an overview of some of the changes that we've made since the last time that we were together.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bob Loken. I'm an architect with ESG in Minneapolis, and I'm just going to, in the interest of time, kind of zip through these, so stop me if you have any questions. We'll highlight some of the changes we made since the last time, but I understand not all of you have seen this, so stop me if you want further clarification. So the main thing that we did after meeting with Mike and Tiffany several times, after meeting with the neighbors several times, meeting with the city's consultants, we resolved to lower the height of the building by about 5 feet, and particularly the portion of the building that faces Second Street, we removed a floor, so it's now a 3-story building instead of a 4-story building on that frontage, and we think it looks a lot better and it'll function a lot better. In conjunction with that, we reduced some of the ins and outs of that building, made it a little bit more uniform, held the street edge a little better. On First Street, we enlarged the courtyard that faces the river, and in conjunction with shrinking the size of the building slightly, we reduced the size of the parking garage as well. We also performed contracted for a traffic study that concluded kind of what we suspected, that the proposed project will generate fewer trips than when the site was used as a bank with the drive-through. It might seem counterintuitive that this much building would generate fewer trips, but it's that residential uses generate a lot fewer trips than retail uses. Typically, residents will leave once or twice a day, whereas a retail or bank generates many, many trips. Sorry, sometimes the computer doesn't want to catch up. There we go. So some data. The project now, we're proposing 109 dwelling units, apartments that of various sizes. That's down from 113. We still have a roughly 2,400 square foot commercial space on the corner of Second and Commercial. 137 parking stalls for residents, guests, and commercial guests and customers.
How many was that?
137 parking stalls.
Thank you.
We calculated that 121 were required, but Tiffany calculated a few less, so. And we've identified several applications. Mike and Tiffany have identified several more, so I'll just list these. We'll need to rezone the small parcel that's an industrial to B3 so that it's all within the B3 zoning district. We will need a variance to exceed the minimum lot area per dwelling, which I think you're going to hear a little bit about on the next item. We'll need a variance to exceed the maximum allowable height of 45 feet, and we'll get into how height is measured in a little bit more detail with some future slides. A variance to reduce the required 20% landscape area. There's a setback variance, also variance for required number of trees, and then we'll make an application to have the FEMA flood map revised once we regrade the site. So the building will comply with FEMA rules, but we'll need to, once we do that, we'll need to make an application and formalize that change. So the next series of images are some before and after. This is the image that we presented first to council and the first time to the neighborhood. You can see this is a view from Second Street, and you can see 4 stories here. The street level is kind of a compressed street level, commercial level. What we've done is we've removed a portion of that second story, so that now the building is 3 stories. It's about a half story lower. And what that also does is it gives more head height to these commercial spaces and the lobby space, and it'll just make them much more functional. And the proportions of the building are much more in keeping with turn-of-the-century commercial buildings up and down Second Street. And here on the left and the right, this is the previous lowest level plan and the current lowest level plan. Not much changes here. Here you can see we've increased the setback of this patio area. Here on street level, not a whole lot of changes, largely consistent. Here's where you can see the big change. So the way that we've reduced a story is we've made this space along Second Street, that street level space, not double height, but 1.5 stories tall, which is an appropriate height for a commercial space. And what that allowed us to do, so here's a building section, as if the building were a layer cake and we cut right through it and we're looking at the layers. Here you can see over on Second Street, you can see 4 stories on Second Street. And what we've done is, by omitting that portion of the second floor, we can now take this whole portion of the building that is adjacent to Second Street, lower it by a 1/2 story, and at the same time increase the height of the, this is residential, but it's essentially our lobby space and commercial space. And here you can also see the parking, which is completely internal to the building. The whole goal of the design of the building is to create a cohesive development that accommodates parking, but doesn't really express the parking externally. You could walk all the way around this building and not know that there's a parking garage in the middle of it. And so then these next few images are just the current renderings we have. We're still working on these. They look pretty sophisticated and realistic, but they really are still just concept level and schematic. This is a view of Second and Commercial, and it's a really good view that illustrates the incredible grade change across the site. There's 18 feet of grade change from the highest point on the corner of Second and Commercial to the lowest point on First and Wisconsin. And the way we've designed the building is to sort of step down following that grade. Here's a view of the building from First Street, which is the riverside. We're still working on this. We'd like to make some changes to this, but the overall volume of the building is consistent with our proposal. You can see that in the center we've got some 2-story townhomes that are set back from the street with some private yards in front, and then the corners of the buildings, in keeping with proper downtown design district guidelines, they hold the street edge. Here's another view of that. This is a good view where you can see how the building sort of steps down toward the river. Here's just a aerial view from quite a distance. I think the main point of this view is just to see this bluff and how our building is in front of that bluff. Here's some views from the river. This is part art and part science, but we think this is a pretty faithful rendering of what that view would look like. Here's another one from a little further back. Here you can see our building here behind these big cottonwood trees. And then these next views are montages where we took a few photographs, street view photographs, and this is based on some feedback from the neighborhood and from staff and also some concerned neighbors. So this is a view along Second Street looking south. This is what we're seeing now. Here you can see the 1-story bank with the gable roof, and then this with the proposed building. And then this is a view that a lot of people were interested in. When you're approaching Hudson from the south, right now there's not a lot of definition to that street, and you've got Ziggy's on the right, which is a handsome building and a well-kept building, but just surface parking and 1-story buildings on the left. And then with the proposed building, what we like about this is that it really creates kind of a clear gateway to the entrance to downtown. And really one of the goals of developing this block in a manner like this is to try to extend that traditional downtown fabric down a block and just grow the size of downtown and extend that walkable area. And here's another view. We did meet with some neighbors up the hill who obviously were concerned or curious about how this development would change their views. And so we knocked on the door and they welcomed us into their office to take some photographs. This one is from their office on the second story of their house. That view now, and then with the development there. I think whether this, if this were developed as of right without needing a variance, I think I think it would look largely the same. It would be, 5 feet shorter, but really it's largely the
Can you
same.
go back again?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Wow.
Yeah, they were, well, I'm not going to speak for them. They were somewhat pleasantly surprised at how minimal this was, but I won't, I did just speak for them, but I shouldn't. Sorry, hold on.
But that other vacant lot down there will go someday too, though, too, you know that, so that.
Sure,
that's-
down-
That site
yeah,
corridor will
down here.
disappear.
Yeah, yep, I think it would, I mean, the goal is that, this area becomes a built-up area of downtown, just like a block north and much like it was earlier in the century. Some kind of conceptual sections through that site, you can really see how this building sits at the bottom of that bluff. And then these are just the straight elevations. So I'm going to use this one to describe how we measure the height of the building, because it really is protracted because of the incredible grade change on the site. So when you have a site, and this is based on Hudson zoning code, which is based on DNR measurement of height. So this site is within the St. Croix Scenic Riverway, and so the DNR has interest in this site, and they regulate it with height maximums that the city then adopts. So I'll go back up here. So the height limit here is 45 feet. So what we've tried to do in designing the building is to design every elevation such that it is 45 feet maximum from the street level, but because, here, I'll go to this next one here.
What street?
Every street. So this is 2nd Street right now, the elevation from 2nd Street, but then as we go around the corner, you can see, so 2nd Street here, you can see where that grade drops off. And the way that height is measured is from an average grade plane. And you can see this blue line here is the calculation of that average grade plane. So it's lower than 2nd Street and higher than 1st Street. And what we're proposing to do is, instead of designing the entire building to be a consistent height that is within 45 feet of that grade plane, what we're proposing is to step down the building so that a portion of it is higher than that 45-foot maximum, and a portion of it is actually a little lower than that 45-foot maximum. We think it fits into the site a little better for the building to follow that natural topography. And then the variance that we're requesting, it is, the way that height is measured is to the absolute top of the uppermost point of the building. And in this case, it's the elevator overrun, so it's a very small portion of the building that needs a little extra height for the elevator. So when you see this max height from grade plane, that 57 feet is from this average grade plane to that highest point of the elevator overrun. The highest point of that building, which is really what you perceive, is about 5 feet less than that. And then here you can see where we measure the building from the average grade of 2nd Street to the highest parapet. We're trying to stay under 45 feet. And then similar on this elevation on 1st Street, 45-foot height from the street. And then here's that view from First Street, looking back up the hill. And then here's the Wisconsin Street elevation, very similar to the commercial street elevation. This is where we have the most grade change. This is where we see that almost that full 18 feet of grade change.
Is that elevator only going to be accessible to those units in that part? Because you got 109 units, obviously not the first floor, but one elevator for all of those units?
A pair of elevators, yeah.
Well, in the same spot, though?
Correct, yep, a pair of elevators next to each other, correct.
So if you live on the far north side or far south side, you're still walking?
Correct, yeah, when you sometimes with buildings that have a large floor plate, you'll take the elevators and you'll distribute them in different corners of the
Right.
building to shorten the walking distance. But when you group the elevators, they actually have a shorter travel time, because when you hit the button, you take the first one that arrives there. If they're separated and remote, you're waiting only for one elevator. So the reason why we group them is, yes, it takes longer to walk from your unit to the elevator, but your actual travel time from your unit to the lobby is shorter.
So the person on First Street on the top corner, third floor of south side, it's got a lot of walking to go up the stairs to move furniture and stuff like that. Not that that's my issue. but-
Probably most people won't use the stairs, probably most people use the elevator, but.
And then walk it all the way through the building.
Yeah, yeah, it's, I mean, in terms of, 100-unit apartment buildings, it's comparable.
Are there any concerns with flooding on the First Street side?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that. So there's a portion of the site that is within the 100-year flood elevation. And so what we need to do to comply with Hudson zoning code, with the DNR and with FEMA, is to locate our lowest elevation 2 feet above, minimum 2 feet above that flood elevation. And maybe I can go back to this building section to describe how that works. Bear with me here. Whoops, went too far. So here, for example, I'll zoom in a little bit. So pretty much every building that is along First Street has to sort of deal with this, and they have to raise their building up to be 2 feet above that elevation. So the 100-year flood elevation is roughly right here at First Street. There's a portion of First Street that's a little bit lower than that 100-year flood elevation. So what we do is we raise the building up a minimum 2 feet above that.
Is there any data available on how many times we've exceeded that in the past X number of years?
1965,
I recall.
that was the last time.
Really?
That's where all those standards came from, was that bad flood of 65.
All right.
Yeah, the FEMA standards require, in order to avoid buying flood insurance, FEMA requires you to build 1 foot above the 100-year flood line. Wisconsin requires you to build 2 feet above, so they have a little extra foot for some reason.
Can I ask you a question about your building height and what you're talking about is the average grade elevation?
Sure.
Back to that last slide you had up before you flipped all the way back here,
Sure thing.
please. Yeah, okay, and then the one showing the slope of the...
Yep.
There we go, I think that one.
This is a good one, yep.
Yeah, that one. By looking at your average grade plane, it looks like the high point of your building, which is the center part of it, after the front block, let's say, appears okay. Mm-hmm. But it would appear to me at this average grade that this part of the building should stop right about here. About 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 windows in. If I, just
Yeah.
by looking at your own drawing here, that would be my conclusion.
Okay, well, I mean, to be perfectly honest, this whole portion of the building exceeds the maximum height.
Yeah, since we're asking questions, I'm on it with you. And I know that I wasn't here when this concept was starting.
Well, it was the city council, not us.
Right. I'm just kind of disturbed by the fact that that's going to be that high. I feel like this has been happening downtown, and there's residents, people have been purchasing, buildings are going in front of them. I'm just kind of getting it's a little frustrating to see people spending money on properties and then bigger buildings are going in front of them. I think it hurts property values. I think it's going to hurt property values of the houses on the hill if their views are blocked. I didn't think that was minimal at all. I thought that was pretty excessive, especially when we know another building will be going there eventually next to it. So I also have a problem, and I had the same problem with the other building that's going up. I don't understand how with 109 units, there's only 137 parking spots. I understand we have an equation, I get it.
I didn't get to that yet.
Well, here's the thing, and I'm still floored by the idea that we think we're only gonna have one car per unit. Like, no, it's not gonna happen. So where do all those overflow cars go? I don't know, because as we've been saying for the last 20 years since I've been here, that we have a parking problem, which I don't agree with completely. As we know, I've always said we have a walking problem, but with all these buildings coming in, we're gonna have a major parking problem, no matter how many parking lots we put in and how many things we do. And because there's no way, I will eat my left shoe if only we have one car per unit for all of these buildings that are going up. And it's not just yours. And so that is...
Maybe residential parking standards have to apply here and not downtown, because this is a residential unit. This is not one commercial part of the building. So it has to be classified like the ones, like the Massey up on the hill across from the dog track or something like that, where they have underground parking too, but they also have 80 surface parking spots, for call it the overflow, friends, guests, relatives, and all that stuff. And I have the same concern. Typically, each apartment or dwelling, if you will, requires 2 spots. You've got 1.
Well, we have the same problem with the other building, and I tried to bring that up, and I was kind of poo-pooed.
And then it gets worse than that. When the bank wasn't open, that lot, your property, was used by lots of people downtown coming to downtown, and that there was 30 to 40 people that would park there on the weekend gratis. And now all those guys, now that, you've pulled it in, which you have that right, there's 40 people out there looking for a parking spot on city property. So it's already worse than we think because of that, because now of the restricted use of the property.
Wait till winter comes.
Well, I understand that, but
I'm just saying,
parking's a separate issue.
No, it's not a separate issue, because all those cars that are overflowing, they're gonna have to move their cars for plowing. Where are they gonna put them? That's even worse in
Oh,
summer.
if they're left outside, yeah, and we don't have any room for them outside.
Well, they're gonna be left outside, because there's only
They can't. There's
137
no room
parking
for it.
spots and 109 units.
Can't happen.
And we can't say to someone, you can't buy this property because you have 2 cars. Can't do that.
It's rent.
Well, you can't rent because you have 2 cars.
I share the concern.
So,
Maybe we'll just point out that the standard is for 2 parking stalls per residential unit in the downtown district. That standard is cut in half.
that doesn't mean it's right. I guess that's my point. Like, I understand the standard, but Hudson has increased in size dramatically in the past few years, especially with stuff going on in the cities. People are moving here, and more than I think we ever predicted. Not even that, people are coming over here more to shop and eat once they discovered our awesome downtown. Thank you, Mary Click. But and they're coming, and they're here, and I know Susie has to see it as much as I see it with real estate, and so I do have a concern. Do we need rentals and stuff? Yes. I'm not saying this project should be not happening. I just think we need to be a little more realistic in what the future is going to look like, because I think maybe we're not. I feel it's a little short-sighted to think that this is going to be adequate parking and the situation is not going to be a problem.
I can't see how the residential was cut in half when I think that was directed more at developments. All the other multi-unit, multi-story apartments we've had in town have been up on the hill, new construction out by Highway 35, in far out places, where this is right in the center of town. I mean, it's a different ballgame altogether down there. And so with that being said, I don't know the answer, and I'm not against the project, it's just the parking's somehow got to be resolved.
Seems like
I think there's a huge
it's a larger
problem.
policy discussion is kind of how, staff would see it. I think when you're looking at urban development trends, kind of nationwide, if you're looking, specifically at what parking requirements are, then maybe it doesn't fit the mold for Hudson, maybe it does, but you're seeing a lot of communities even go so far as to eliminate parking minimums.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
we-
saying that's the right
yeah, but
thing. This is a
they use
larger.
the parking down in that area for our downtown businesses. You can't do
No,
that.
I'm not saying we should do. I'm just saying this is a larger policy discussion that should take place. What that right balance is, I can't tell you, and I don't think, the Hudson's parking minimums are gonna be the same as La Crosse, are gonna be the same as Stillwater. Even Stillwater, that would be a comparable community, I would say, to kind of what we have on the river, nearby. What do their downtown parking minimums look like, and then contrast that with, other examples, and, that is the next item on the agenda is, we will talk about, it's obvious we've got development pressure, there's things happening that our code, quite frankly, can't handle. And I think it's definitely worth at least a conversation. But, I don't know, Ari, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I did. Commissioner, first of all, you have your pulse on something really important, so thank you for bringing up parking, and we're happy to talk in more detail about our thought process for parking. One thing I want to clarify is that we didn't determine our parking number because the city has halved the requirement because it's in the downtown area. That's why we're not proposing like 60 or 70 spaces. We determined the parking based off of what we think we need in order to lease these units. And at market rents, residents are not going to tolerate having to go find a street parking spot every time they come and go from their unit. So we have a real strong built-in incentive to make sure that we get the parking right inside our building. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to lease our units. And I think the thought process for cities that do away with parking minimums is that whoever is building a new building has a real strong incentive to make sure that they have the right number of on-site parking spaces based off of what they need to make sure that their building works. And I talked a little bit about the portfolio that Reuter Walton has developed across the Twin Cities, and even larger, much larger when you add in all of the ESG projects. We do these all the time, and we would never build a building that was underparked, certainly not deliberately. We need to make sure that all residents who are paying the rents that we're asking them to pay have parking spaces that they feel are commensurate with the new buildings that they're moving into. And so the parking that we have here is informed by the collection of all of those previous projects in urban areas, in suburban areas, in cities like Hudson, in cities different than Hudson. Every project is evaluated on its own, and that is what's fed into this. And then on top of that, the last thing I'll say is we typically have a third party study this too to make sure that we're not way off in our assumptions. And so the traffic engineer who we asked to look at trip counts, we also asked to look at our parking. And we're happy to share the report with anyone who would like to review it, concluded that we're appropriately parked for this unit count, this bedroom count, this location, lack of public transportation, all of the unique factors that Hudson has.
Since we're airing our laundry a little bit too, I have a concern about green space. You got 113 units where I don't see any place for a picnic table, a gazebo. If anybody had any kids, where do they play? And so that leads me to say that, this building intends on using the city park as their green space.
I understand why you're saying that, Commissioner Yerg. If you look at your screen on the level 2
Yeah, I've
site
looked
plan,
at that.
so the entire center of that building is outdoor green space for residents to use for all of the features that you just mentioned. pergolas, fire pits.
I saw
grill
club room and
stations.
stuff, but I didn't see the
Yeah, so the clubroom is inside.
unoccupied green roof. I saw that, but that wasn't clear.
All of that area, like the lighter shaded part in the center of the building, is all accessible outdoor space for the building. The programmed part is kind of runs around the perimeter, and we haven't really scratched the surface on exactly how this area is going to be laid out and where all of the features are going to be, but the intent is that this is the outdoor green space. It's just elevated off the street level.
Thank you for the clarification, but I still think you're short.
I would like to see the study that you had spoken about, and then also when they talk about this being an urban area, people, I think what I'm reading into this is that you're anticipating that occupants would be, a fair amount of them will be possibly walking to work, because you did mention the lack of, we don't have a public transit system within here. In addition to that, we also don't have a vast amount of employment downtown. And I'm curious as to how many people that work downtown would be also interested in living in a rental situation. And with that, I'm also curious what those market rents are for all the units.
Sure.
How is that segmented out?
Yep.
What are those?
Maybe
Do you
I'll
have
start with that and I'll go in reverse. Yeah, we're just over $2 per square foot. And the way to make that equate to real money is just take a square footage of a unit and multiply it by 2, or
That's
just
for every
over 2.
unit?
That's the average across the building.
So a
Some of-
one-bedroom unit is gonna be $1,700?
Some of them are more, some of them are less. Yeah, 1,700 is
For a
a
one-bedroom market,
typical one-bedroom. There are.
I am under rent
Wait,
charging a
I got
rent.
it, I got it.
There are smaller units that are in the $1,300 to $1,500 a month range. There are our largest townhomes on First Street that'll be significantly more expensive than that. So we create a diversity of price points throughout the building so that we can have a diversity of people, at all different stages of their lives. Bigger units, smaller units, and that is what influences our parking. So if we were only 2-bedroom units, you would say, okay, well, your typical 2-bedroom renter in this location is probably going to command 2 parking spaces. So we look at exactly what our unit breakdown is, and we say, okay, that unit type is going to need 2, that unit type might need 1.5, unit type might need 0.75 if it's the really small units. And we take that average and then create a parking program for the building. So there's a pretty fine level of detail that we go through.
I just still struggle with it because I think projections have historically been wrong. And I think we see it in all aspects of our city, in all different government levels. They've been wrong. And I can't think of, I have a single-family house with 6 cars. People, exactly, the lack of, are we having public transportation? Is it still coming?
They wouldn't
'Cause that
ride
would
it,
be
they
great.
wouldn't ride it anyway.
No,
But their independence.
But still, there's so much of what Susie just said that I agree with too, that we need to see those studies, and I don't even know if those studies to me, and I know you've done this, I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I just have concerns that it's short-sighted, and I don't want to lose track of the fact of the height situation either, so I'm just bringing that back up to the forefront, because.
Can I interject?
Have we given a variance to other buildings downtown?
Yeah, Dibbo's got one for the elevator overrun. So when they redid that project, the elevator exceeded the height, the elevator pit.
What was the height on that?
106
do you recall?
Buckeye was another one.
106, the height on that one, they were at 45 feet, but for that, the elevator overrun, so I'd have to go back and look what the exact number was. On 106 Buckeye, they had one for dry land access. So they had the floodplain issue too. So they had to raise up and do that Clomer-Lomer thing that they referenced earlier to get to build the property out of the floodplain. And they had reduced dry land access, which is again for access for safety purposes. They were able to get an easement from the marina to help take care of some of that. But that wasn't a height one. Other than that,
The Valley Cartage Building didn't ask for one?
that was for grading in a small, very small area. That was, the
didn't
grade of it
recall
was
that,
over like 12%, but that was not a height variance.
When you say Dibbles, you're talking about the new project that's,
Yes, the condos there, yep.
and it was just for the elevator?
the elevator.
Is this just for the elevator?
No.
But that was very offset from the street. If you don't
I
even,
know.
you don't even see it.
I know, but again, it was just for the elevator part, which is X amount of feet wide versus X amount of feet wide.
So if
It's
this
not
building-
apples to apples,
If
is
this
my
building
point.
were 5 feet shorter and didn't need a variance for height, it would still block a view from whoever's up the hill, you know, the few houses that are up the hill, correct?
There's only one, and that's an office building. They're not blocked. I'd like to change the narrative a little bit and challenge your thought line of thinking.
Okay.
Why are we pointing out negatives on this project? Now, hear me out. A couple of years back, we approved, under my objection, of a housing development on Cooley Road. And at that time, everybody downtown, and the representative of that district as well, was in favor of more housing downtown. And that continues to this day. So here we have, and this is my challenge to your value question, here you have a wonderful building and a wonderful ownership group who are doing their due diligence to put something in there that this community would like. They're addressing those issues. But yet we sit here and point out the negatives and not the positives of what this is going to bring downtown as far as more housing, some jobs. These people, have you gone to some of the restaurants downtown or the smaller stores or services downtown and asked those ownership, what do you think of this? They're going to fill you're going to be busy. You're going to have more people coming through your door. But yet we choose to sit on the negative side of the parking instead of finding the solution to that. And I don't want to see this project go away. I'm not suggesting that's what you're
No,
saying.
I know. I'll answer what you're saying, though. My answer to you is, I wasn't around when you objected to Cooley. My other answer to you is that I'm not against the project. I'm concerned about the parking and what it's going to do to the rest of downtown, because it's going to affect everyone downtown. Will it bring more activity? Absolutely. Right? Same with the other building that's going up, that's also, to my opinion, short-sighted in parking, that's going up a block away, that has this, there's two going up. They're both wrong with their parking structures, in my opinion, and maybe I'll be proven wrong. But as I sit here today, I have a very good feeling that I won't be when this is done, just because we've seen it happen over and over.
All due respect to both you and Susie being in the real estate business, but this is a completely different thing than what you've dealt with. As far as I know, I don't believe you've sold or rented any of these things, have you? Any apartment buildings?
That
doesn't matter.
No, but what the value, where are you getting your value question, is what I'm asking.
I'm not worried about the value. I was worried about the value, yes, of properties that with the view. And if it's not going to block properties with the view, and that's why we're having discussion about the variance. That's not even I just said my main concern is the parking. I have a concern about the variance. My main concern is the parking. I think Susie's question of how many times have we given a variance is a good question, because we're also setting the precedence for future. So we need to think about those things.
And we haven't
No one's
passed.
squashing it. No one's squashing it. This
But
is
we're-
why
we're
we
sitting
come to
there
Plan
pointing the
Commission.
negatives out.
No, but it's not just negatives. These are the concerns.
What's
You
the
come to Plan
positives?
Commission, and we have concerns. If we just rubber stamp it, then what's the point of us sitting here?
That's
So
not-
we want to have questions
That's not the
answered.
point. Yeah, and I agree, certainly. Absolutely. But to me, this is a valuable addition to downtown.
No one's saying
I've
it's not
heard
valuable,
it so
Randy.
many
We're
times.
saying there's concerns, just like no one's saying the other project is not valuable, but there are concerns.
Okay, so let's say these guys pack up their briefcase and go home.
They're not going to do that.
Hear me out. What, are we going to go through the next people and go through the same thing? How do you address
Yes.
the problem? Where's the solution?
You tell me how to address the parking problem, because we've been trying to do it for 20 years. I just feel we might be
Been longer than
adding Okay, well,
If I could change the narrative again, as you said earlier, I think there's a couple of other things that, I don't know if anybody else is asking this or thinking this, but when I look at the view of when you come into downtown, it looks pretty mammoth to me. When you take that look north, the view that you showed,
It looks what?
there you go. When you're driving into Hudson going north here, and it's on the left, when you look at the size of the building, it's quite large compared to everything else that is forward of that. And that's the first thing I see, which, right or wrong, I don't know if that's a right or a wrong, but it's just that opinion. I don't see the link to the existing architecture of downtown. I see it as a fairly contemporary building. I personally would like to see it blend in more. I think it sticks out significantly compared to the rest of downtown, where other buildings have attempted to, and I'm not against contemporary, I have no problem with that. I just think that the other buildings downtown have tried to retain character of the period that they were built.
It's an interesting comment, Commissioner, because we heard that from the first concept that we shared. And we spent a lot of time trying to improve the architecture to satisfy that point, right? To make it feel more consistent with the historical architecture of downtown Hudson. So one of the things that we're really excited about is, this central element, which has a 3-story building with these arches that go along the middle of the building. And there's a series of boutiques on 2nd Street that if you just took the middle portion of the building, the white portion, it's pretty much exactly the same building. I don't know what that building's name is. There's 6 or 7 tenants in it. But I would encourage you, if you go to 2nd Street and you look at that, and then you look at this, you would say, that actually looks strikingly similar to that building.
where Kensington is, I think.
I think that's right, yeah. And
Yeah,
Bob can talk more about the architectural detail, but the 3-story, all masonry with a window pattern that we think is pretty representative of the downtown, with this nice thick metal cornice on the top, were all influences that we drew from spending a lot of time here and trying to build a building that fit in.
Yeah, I mean, we're purposely trying to design a building that looks like it's of its time, but respects the historic context of what we're not doing is trying to replicate or make a historicist building. What we're trying to do is look to those buildings in terms of materials and proportions. So things like vertically proportioned windows, regularly spaced windows, a traditional commercial story that has larger storefronts and then more punched windows above, things like that. I mean, the fact that it's masonry on all of these street-facing sides with vertically proportioned windows, I think speaks to that historic architecture without mimicking it. And sometimes, I mean, the way we build buildings now, there just isn't the craftsmanship. So I think sometimes when I see modern buildings that try to replicate or duplicate historic buildings, like down to the very detail, they usually fall short. So what we're trying to do is design a building that looks like it's of its time, but is respectful of that context.
Could you back up one slide, Ari? Oh,
This one, to the original?
no, I'll go back to the, no, maybe that's not, maybe it's forward,
That's okay.
the
One of
bank
these.
building.
All along Main Street.
The one that maintains the historical perspective of our downtown, the Swiss Chalet that we've got there.
This one?
No, not that one, the actual picture
The
of the
First
bank.
American Bank or
There,
First
there.
State Bank?
The Associated Bank. So, I mean, clearly that, I don't know what looks more contemporary, that or the building that's being proposed. Just rhetorical. Because that clearly doesn't fit.
Are you talking about the awning?
I'm talking about
Or,
this
I'm sorry, which one are we talking about? I didn't
The
catch
old Associated Bank.
Bank building.
He's making,
Does that fit in with
Yeah, no,
architecture
no,
downtown?
of course not, no.
Well, I still feel the
So-
parking's a valid concern because,
But I want to address that.
okay,
So clearly, the Plan Commission has been working on parking here for a long time.
yes, we are.
Anything that comes up downtown, whether it's some type of development or just parking issues in general, right? And I clearly understand, and I've questioned this with developers too, you know, it's, how can you, there are people that are gonna come in here and move downtown that aren't gonna have a car, which is clearly part of what you're saying. And, but, you know, I'm not the expert on that. One thing I do know is that people are gonna look at this and they're gonna say, where am I gonna park my cars? Right? And if they don't have a parking spot, they're not gonna move in here. And they're not gonna be able to park on the street because they're metered. And there's no overnight parking. They try to do that, they'll be fined. We still don't have critical data on our parking system yet, but we metered 300 spaces that previously were not metered. And we don't know exactly what that means yet with respect to the density of the parking downtown. But we do know that we don't have parkers that are gonna be there all day long.
Well, I have to comment on that. What's happening is they're coming up to the residential areas like where I live, and the streets are getting lined every night with cars. And because the people that do work downtown don't want to pay the meters, so they're parking up
I
there.
believe that, yeah.
And so it's just pushing the problem from one area to another, where, say, if an ambulance came to my next door neighbor who's 99, you know, they couldn't get at her house because it's just jammed full of cars. And so you don't hear about this, but the parking is moving, and it's moving to the path of least resistance where they can park for free, and it's still relatively close. Well, there's only one part of town that you can do that, and it's up by our old library. It's up by the, where Canoki's is, up Locust Street, Vine Street, up in that neck of the woods, 3rd Street. They're parking more and more up in that area, and it's creeping. You ought to see it on a weekend. They're parked all the way up to 7th Street. They can't park downtown.
If you remember, that was done intentionally, though, because that's why we metered some of the streets we metered back then, was to get turnover in front of the stores more, so they would get more business, and people would park, people, if they didn't want to pay the meters, could park farther away. It was actually, if you remember this, it was actually designed that, how it is. So how it was, back when Denny did that, I mean, obviously that part's working, however, it's causing a problem, you're right.
The point being is that it's going in, it's just plugging up one area and it's just going to another area.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are parking their trailers from boat launching. I mean, you name it, just all kinds of things are going on, and it's just, it's not right. It shouldn't be.
Well,
And I don't know how to fix it.
all right, and that's a different discussion for a different
Right,
day.
I understand that.
I don't think we're gonna be dealing
And
with,
that shouldn't impair them at all.
right.
I agree.
It's important that we see
So-
that study that you referenced. Again, I go back to this isn't an urban area. It's not.
Yeah,
I mean,
the study-
You can call it urban, but it's not. It's just downtown.
The study, to be clear, treats it as a suburban area. It's classified as a suburban area. So the parking engineers have a bunch of different location classifications that they use. They are sophisticated enough, and they do this as many times as they do, to understand that if you have a built-out downtown like Hudson, but there's no public transportation and there's no, typical urban amenities that you'd find in a bigger city, they treat it as being suburban, because they know that the driving patterns are going to be similar if you lived, further outside of downtown.
You finish your thought?
Rich, I want to hear your summation of, you weren't allowed to finish, I apologize.
No, that's, again, I don't view this as adding to or creating a parking problem downtown. I think that, again, if I were to be interested in moving into one of these places and I had 2 cars and they tell me, we don't have spots for 2 cars, I'm not renting. I think it's as simple as that. And knowing especially that there isn't any place out on the street where I can park my car, my second car.
So is parking optional with these apartments, or if you rent one, you get a parking spot? Is that how it normally works?
You have to pay extra for the parking spot, but people are typically factoring that in when they're deciding whether they want to rent or not. That's one of the first questions they ask is, how does parking work?
How many units will be under market rent?
None of them. They're all market rate units.
And how is that determined, market rate?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'm just wondering if.
St. Paul base numbers, or is it a little bit less because we're in Wisconsin?
No, it's market for Hudson. You know,
Hudson.
we determine the rental rates based off of what we think we can rent the units for specifically here and specifically for this building, with comparable data from the closest buildings that we can get to understand what prevailing rental rates are. And then we'll make adjustments for the specific location for this building, what its features have, what its features don't have. You know, there are almost no buildings that are exactly identical to each other. So we make all sorts of adjustments when we're determining rental rates. And to be sure, these rental rates are very preliminary. We don't lock in rental rates until we're sometimes 3 to 4 months before opening.
Of course.
So we have underwritten projected rental rates, which we'll get to later when we talk about tax increment financing and some of the other things that the project will need to move forward. You have a financial consultant that dives into the rental rates and proves them out, doesn't prove them out.
So will vouchers be allowed? Rental
No.
vouchers?
No.
They will not be allowed?
Not be.
So from our June 27th meeting into the current picture on page 1, did you add retail? If I recall, I asked the question as if you only had one
corner commercial.
commercial. Now you have the full north to south Second Street full commercial?
We did not add retail. You can see the retail on the left side, the 2,824 square feet on the corner, and then the 2,423 square feet on the corner on the right side.
So the rendering on page 1 that says retail all the way down is wrong on those pictures?
You gotta look at the inside diagrams.
Yeah.
Maybe it's aspirational.
I'm looking at page 1.
I lost page
Retail,
one a
where
long
it says
time ago.
retail, yeah.
Yeah, that's just the corner of
Just that corner?
Second and Commercial Street. We have other, we would call them active uses that go up and down Second Street, including the building's
Yeah.
front entrance, the building's fitness center, multiple residential units, and then the retail space that then starts to hit the corner. And we're looking at some configurations that could add an additional 600 or so square feet of retail space down onto commercial as the corner wraps, that we're still playing with.
And the 2 residential units that face Second Street are designed such that they could
Be
you know,
converted.
As we move the project forward and, you know, Ari and his team start trying to reach out to potential commercial tenants, if they find more tenants than can fit in that 2,400 square feet space.
We can expand.
We have the ability to expand it.
Well, without a second elevator, those are the only 2 I'd be renting.
Oh my gosh, Randy.
You might appreciate
Use a
one of the-
dolly, Randy.
You might appreciate all, you
Wheelchair can't rent, Randy.
My God.
can see, if you're interested, Councilmember, that on the first level, so the image on the right, you can see, it's kind of hard to see with this zoomed out view, but there's doors that go into all these townhomes. See, all these units have direct access to the garage. They don't have to go through the lobby or through the
And
elevators.
doors onto the street as well.
Okay.
For all their cars?
No, those are designed to be for the two parking spaces that the townhomes will get each.
What is our goal here tonight? What are we here to do?
Discussion and possible action is the way it reads, but what are we looking at?
Sounds like they want some data on the
Yep, the
parking. So is an option, is there to postpone or?
Yeah, I think we just meet again. Let's get the information to the council members that is relevant to the discussion.
Well, I think the parking and the parking is, I mean, just so there's,
Yep.
we have a better direction of what's going on. I mean, it's not intended to penalize you guys, but I guess by our maybe not knowing ourselves exactly what to expect here, or we've only seen the side effects of what's happening down there, and it's, you know, as it gets busier, I mean, it's great for everybody, but it also causes a problem. And, I mean, if I guess for your, I still beg to differ with you on that when you say you only need one per spot, because, again, I have apartment buildings by me, and half of them have at least 2 cars, working couples.
And
So,
we
I mean,
have about a
I don't
third
know what
of,
that means. I'm not trying to throw that as the fish hook that stops the boat here, but,
we have roughly a third of our units that'll have 2 parking spaces.
for double? Okay. Well, you thought, as you said then, you thought about it.
We have, it's a big investment. So to the mayor's point from earlier, we've got to get it right or we won't be able to rent units. So we have a very large incentive to make sure that we get the parking right. Very, very large. And it's informed, like I said, by buildings that we've done over the years where we can see, you know what, that might have been a little too much. That one might be a little too little. We're constantly trying to fine tune the parking ratios and get as close as we can. Nobody wants to build more parking than is necessary, and nobody wants to build too little parking. So we're trying to Goldilocks it and get it just right.
Well, kind of the attractiveness of a downtown area is that, I mean, if you could drive up and park right in front of the place, that's what we all want. Some people won't go to a place unless they can get within a block.
That's that walking problem thing I was talking about?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, those are the types of, you know, we see and hear that stuff all day long, and people complain. People are like farmers, they just complain.
Yeah, we think and are confident that residents in this
I don't
building,
even know where to go with that statement, Fred.
Well, I mean, it's true.
residents in this building, we're pretty sure
They're some of the hardest working people I've ever met.
I didn't say they weren't.
unless it's really cold out, which we all know it sometimes can be, we're pretty sure that most of the residents in this building will be walking to Second Street Merchants, not driving, so they're not adding another burden on taking up those street front spaces. It'll be a lot easier for them to walk, so we're excited about that potential.
All right, so we'll just hold this over.
I would move to postpone until we have one more discussion on the issues that are of concern.
Okay?
I'd like to see the parking, the study.
That's one of them.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what we're waiting on, and
Okay.
But we want to move expeditiously for you people too, and hopefully we're not hurting you too bad here.
bear in mind also on the other issue, the height issue,
Yep.
we are not even the council is gonna be the last word on this.
Yeah, DNR will be.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
I'm concerned about that too, as I brought up.
Yeah,
is-
but, you know, it will be the DNR that's gonna make the decision on this, even if we decide to
That makes sense.
vote on a variance. We're not the final word on this.
I just quickly, do we know how high the Ziggy's building is? I was just kind of curious with the difference, if you could find that. I'm just curious.
We can
From the
measure it.
view, I
The
just want
entire
to
block.
know how high. How tall is the Ziggy's building? When you look at them across the street from each other, is it 5 feet difference? Is it 6 feet difference? I'm just curious.
I think it's significantly taller from the
Well, and when you
vantage
look at
point
the
of
view,
Second Street.
from what floor?
No, it's shorter, but
Ziggy's is
Oh,
shorter.
Ziggy's.
Yeah, I just want to know the difference.
It's like Ziggy's is a 2-story building, and this is a 3.
So it's at least 10 feet
two-story
shorter.
with 12-foot ceiling, so.
But if you're worried about the view, I mean,
No, I'm not. I'm just curious. I'm just curious because, like Susie said, it's just a question. I'm not like, don't read too much into it. It's just a curiosity.
We can do some calculations on some other buildings downtown for perspective.
Ziggy's is fine, it's the little ones interspersed throughout that kind of make it look kittywampus a little bit, but it's all those little ones.
I know, I'm just looking at, you guys are reading too much into it. I just wanted to see because those are the buildings across, they're just across from each other.
Well, keep in mind on the right past Hop and Barrel, there's gonna be another building that's gonna be sizable also, right?
That's correct.
So it's not gonna,
With a walkway across the street.
right, this isn't gonna be the only building of size down there.
Well,
And excessive parking.
to that point, I mean, the project across the street, the variances were denied. So that project, as far as we know right now, is effectively not happening.
Why were the variances denied?
What
What variances were denied?
The,
Gallagher's,
what?
Gallagher's has been,
Gerard's.
Gerard, I meant, that's what I
They
meant.
were denied primarily because, I mean, they have height and density, but the zoning board of appeals through the Baldwin City Council and said this is a policy decision, it's not really within, they didn't believe it was within their purview.
So it was denied because of height and density.
Density was the one they acted on. Tiffany, wasn't that the one they acted on? Yeah, the lot area ratio?
The lot area ratio?
Yes.
I'm just,
Minimum.
Minimum lot area.
I'm just saying, okay? Okay.
Well, again, I move to postpone until next time. Let's move on here, I guess.
Yeah, I second.
So, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right. Thanks, guys. Okay, discussion and possible action on forwarding a recommendation to Common Council to set a public hearing date to amend Chapter 255-16 Sub C Sub 1 Sub B and Chapter 255 Attachment 2 Table of Dimensional Requirements.
So as we've updated our comprehensive plan, with that, some goals have been outlined, particularly to housing goals and how we expand or keep our downtown as it is. Part of that discussion that city staff wants to delve into a little more is updating our planned commercial district code in zoning, specifically PCD2 requirements, as those pertain to the B3 commercial lots in particular. So in the issue sheet you all have, it outlines some various recommended changes to better align the goals of the newly updated comp plan. Such changes would be proposing a reduction to the required acreage to establish a PCD2 from 2 acres down to 1/4 acre, as that is the typical average
size.
lot size, yeah, for downtown lots. Another reduction would be in the rear yard setback from the 25 feet. We're yet to determine or settle on a number on that one yet. Discussions are happening. And then another part was lowering the minimum lot area requirements for multifamily uses, specifically because we're concerned that our code is not very friendly to multifamily uses. So with that, this item is just merely a request of the Plan Commission to forward a recommendation to council to set a public hearing. We're not here to discuss the zoning code as it stands right now, just because we haven't really gotten things finalized yet or fully drafted out. But we are looking to have the public hearing be set for October 17th.
So you just need a motion to proceed?
Yeah.
I so move. Second.
Got a motion second to recommend to the council public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. I don't have anything.
I have one issue. Since we're on parking, I'm gonna be frowned upon here for saying this, but we have restaurants downtown that have increased their capacity, doubled it. And by adding pergolas, by adding decks, by doing different things, different seating arrangements, and they have to come under some guidance and scrutiny and/or, I mean, if you double the capacity and they're not paying any payment in lieu of parking or anything else, I mean, here we go again, we're on this same thing of parking. And so I guess the parking issue is not just these guys, it's other things too. And so I don't want to lose sight of that to bring up some of the other ones causing the problems.
Sure.
And I mean, it's all because they're doing great, and I mean, I don't want to impair that, but is that fair to the next guy? Is that, I mean, is it fair to the adjoining neighbors that where they're parking? I mean, there's just all kinds of things that come up. So, I mean, to include that in the discussion, if you will, I mean, just to add that facet to it.
Okay.
Because I think others have done that.
Yep. Okay.
I can't remember though, if it was the last meeting we had that I had asked for us to review four-wheel vehicle ATF, or not ATF. Was that here, or was that a public safety? To look at the zoning and ordinance for four-wheel vehicles in the community.
Or what?
Four-wheel, like golf carts, four-wheeler, side-by-sides.
Road golf carts, all
Thanks.
that stuff, we were to talk about that. I remember that too.
Yeah.
Did we talk about it here?
No,
Why would we talk
You
about it
weren't
here?
here.
Oh, yeah.
no, but we brought it up, that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why wouldn't that be like public safety or public works or?
Yeah, please, thanks.
Are we done? Can I move to adjourn? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I withdraw that.
I'm Jim Ellsbury from the county. I'm the facilities director, and I noticed that G was pulled from tonight's meeting. We had an email yesterday that we had 2 questions that we had to respond to. I responded to the one about the generator, and we were here to seek conditional approval to keep moving with our project for the government center. So I don't know why we got pulled.
It was just pulled, so we'll discuss that in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.